Arabica. It is the most widely consumed coffee bean in the world, and for good reason. Grown at high altitudes, typically between 600 and 2,000 meters above sea level, Arabica thrives in cooler climates with rich soil and steady rainfall. It originated in the highlands of Ethiopia, where coffee as a drink is believed to have first been discovered. The beans are oval-shaped and have a slightly curved crease down the middle. In the cup, Arabica tends to be smooth and mildly acidic, often carrying notes of fruit, sugar, or even chocolate, depending on where it was grown. The flavor can shift quite noticeably depending on the country of origin. Ethiopian Arabica often tastes floral and fruity, while Colombian Arabica tends to be nutty and caramel-like. It makes up roughly 60 to 70% of global coffee production, though it is more delicate and harder to grow than other varieties, making it more vulnerable to disease and climate shifts. Robusta. As the name suggests, this bean is tough. Robusta grows at lower altitudes and tolerates heat, humidity, and disease far better than Arabica. It is produced heavily across Vietnam, Uganda, and parts of West Africa. The bean itself is smaller and rounder, and the plant produces caffeine at nearly twice the concentration of Arabica, which also acts as a natural insect repellent. That high caffeine content makes Robusta taste stronger, more bitter, and earthier. It is not usually the first choice for specialty coffee drinkers, but it plays a critical role in espresso blends, where it adds body and produces that thick layer of crema on top of a shot. Many everyday commercial coffees rely on Robusta to keep costs down without sacrificing intensity. In Italy especially, Robusta has long been a respected part of traditional espresso culture, Liberica. This one is rarely talked about outside of Southeast Asia, but it has a story worth knowing. Liberica originated in Liberia in West Africa, and in the late 1800s it briefly became the world's most important coffee crop when a disease called coffee leaf rust nearly wiped out global Arabica supplies. Farmers in the Philippines, Malaysia, and other parts of Asia adopted it quickly. The plant itself grows unusually large, sometimes reaching 9 meters tall, and so do its cherries and beans, which are irregularly shaped compared to other varieties. The flavor is quite distinct, often described as woody, smoky, or even floral, with a full body and an aroma that some people find closer to jackfruit than traditional coffee. It remains a cultural staple in the Philippines, where a local variety called Kapeng Barako is still brewed strong and black in the traditional style, and older generations in particular hold it close. Excelsa. For a long time, Excelsa was classified as a subspecies of Liberica, and some botanists still group them together, but in terms of flavor and how it is used, the two are quite different. Excelsa grows on tall trees in Southeast Asia, particularly in the Philippines and Vietnam, and produces a smaller almond-shaped bean. The taste is layered and complex, tart and fruity at the front, with a lingering dark roasted quality toward the finish. It is almost never drunk on its own. Instead, roasters blend it in small amounts with other beans to add depth and complexity to a cup that might otherwise taste flat or one-dimensional. That behind-the-scenes role is part of why most coffee drinkers have never heard of it, even though it has very likely influenced the flavor of blends they already enjoy on a daily basis. Gesha. Few coffee beans have risen to fame as quickly or as dramatically as Gesha. It traces its origins to a small town called Gesha in southwestern Ethiopia. But it came to global attention in 2004 when a farm in Panama called Hacienda La Esmeralda entered it in a competition, and the tasting panel was stunned by its quality. The bean is long and narrow, and growing it requires very specific conditions, high altitude, precise temperature ranges, and careful processing at every stage. In the cup, it produces something almost unlike typical coffee, bright and tea-like with intense floral aromas and flavors that often include jasmine, bergamot, and tropical fruit. The rarity of ideal growing conditions, combined with its exceptional quality, has made Gesha one of the most expensive coffees in the world, with some lots selling for hundreds of dollars per pound at auction. For many in the specialty coffee world, it represents the ceiling of what coffee can taste like. Typica. This is one of the oldest cultivated varieties of Arabica, and nearly every modern Arabica variety can trace some part of its genetics back to it. Typica spread from Ethiopia to Yemen, then traveled through India and Indonesia before Dutch traders brought it to the Americas in the early 1700s. It produces a relatively low yield, which makes it less economically attractive to large-scale farmers. But the cup quality is considered excellent, clean, sweet, and well-balanced with a clarity that lets the terroir of the growing region come through. Many specialty coffee growers who prioritize flavor over volume still cultivate Typica today, particularly in parts of Peru, Jamaica, and Papua New Guinea. The famous Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee, known for its mild flavor and near-complete absence of bitterness, comes from Typica plants grown at high altitude with meticulous care. Bourbon. Bourbon is a natural mutation of Typica that developed on the island of Réunion, formerly known as Bourbon, off the east coast of Africa. French missionaries brought Typica plants there in the early 1700s, and over generations the plants slowly adapted to local conditions. The result was a bean with a slightly rounder shape and a noticeably sweeter, more complex flavor profile. In the mid-1800s, bourbon made its way to Brazil and then spread widely across Latin America, where it became one of the most important varieties in the region. Today, bourbon is grown across El Salvador, Guatemala, Rwanda, and Burundi, among other countries. Red bourbon is the most common, but yellow and pink fruited versions also exist, each carrying subtle differences in sweetness and acidity that experienced tasters can often detect in the cup. Catuai. This variety is a product of deliberate scientific breeding rather than natural evolution. In the 1950s and 60s, researchers in Brazil crossed Mundo Novo, itself a natural hybrid of Typica and bourbon, with a compact variety called Caturra. The goal was entirely practical. Create a plant small enough to grow densely, strong enough to survive harsh weather, and productive enough to make commercial farming more viable. Catuai achieves all of that. It grows in tight rows, withstands wind and heavy rain, and produces consistently heavy yields season after season. The flavor is solid, pleasant, mild, and balanced, though it rarely reaches the complexity of older heritage varieties like bourbon or Typica. Because of its reliability, Catuai became the backbone of coffee farming across Central America and Brazil, where it still covers enormous growing areas and supports the livelihoods of countless farming families today. Quetamor. Quetamor came out of a very specific and urgent problem. In the 1950s, a hybrid called Híbrido de Timor was discovered growing naturally in East Timor. It was a cross between Arabica and Robusta, and it carried natural resistance to coffee leaf rust, the same disease that had devastated crops nearly a century earlier. Researchers in Portugal used it to develop Quetamor by crossing it with the compact Caturra plant. The result was a rust-resistant, high-yielding variety that could grow at lower altitudes than most Arabica, making it accessible to farmers in a wider range of climates. Farmers in Vietnam, India, and Central America adopted it widely. The trade-off is flavor. Quetamor can carry earthy or harsh notes that reflect its Robusta ancestry. However, when grown carefully at higher elevations and processed with close attention, the cup quality improves significantly, and ongoing research continues to find ways to bring out the best in it. SL28 and SL34. These two varieties are often spoken of together because they share a similar origin story and an equally strong reputation. In the 1930s, the Scott Agricultural Laboratories in Kenya, which gives both their SL designation, systematically tested dozens of coffee varieties to find ones that could thrive in Kenya's specific growing conditions and hold up through periods of drought. SL28 was selected for its drought resistance and SL34 for its ability to handle heavy rainfall and fluctuating weather. Both turned out to produce exceptional coffee in the cup. Kenyan coffee grown from these varieties is celebrated for its bright acidity, full body, and distinctive flavors that often include blackcurrant, tomato, and citrus. The combination of rich volcanic soil, high altitude, and the particular genetics of these two plants is what gives Kenyan coffee its unmistakable and widely admired character. SL28 in particular has become highly sought after by specialty roasters around the world, and is now being trialed in other countries to see if that quality can be replicated beyond Kenya's borders.